Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Beneath Vancouver Radio, episode number 70. That is 70. Wow. 70.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a long time coming. I think this June actually would be officially 4 years since I started the podcast. Very, very bad first episode, but here we are 69 episodes later. I'm joined by my good friend Meg. Meg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Good to join you today.
Thank you for coming along. We're still at WeWork, but we're in a different setup with WeWork. Funny enough, the room that we did Tim's episode is taken up right now, just diagonally across. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking a little bit about your life post-grad. For those who are unaware, Meg has her own podcast as well.
It's called I'm in My 20s.
I'm in your 20s. Okay.
Yes.
There you go. I knew it was something 20s related. Apologies. Yeah. But I think what I really enjoyed about your podcast, not just my episode, obviously, if you haven't listened, check it out. But just in general, the podcast is the realities and truths that come out of those conversations. And I did actually a quick little YouTube video. I've been doing this kind of weekly series, Catching Up with Aaron, which you've been supportive of. Thank you. And my first episode was talking about navigating your 20s. And I said, you know what, I would love to have an actual conversation with someone about that. And, even though this podcast is more focused, I would say on the business side or something like that, I wanted to, for this, revamp season, kind of diversify a little bit and start talking about things that I think for the most part, our audience members, both your podcast and mine, probably want to hear about. People that are in their 18 to 24, kind of within that ballpark, if not a bit younger, if not a bit older. So that's a lot of talking on my part. So Meg, I'll let you take it away. And why don't you just share kind of who you are today?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much again for having me. So my name is Meg and I am in my 20s. And this is very fitting because I'm facing quarter life crisis. I actually just turned 24 a couple months ago, back in February. So it's definitely a big topic that's been on my mind a lot more lately, considering I classify myself now as mid-20s, not really early 20s anymore, which is terrifying. But a bit about my background is I graduated from UBC last year with a degree in marketing. So I went to UBC School of Business, and post-graduation, I got, pretty lucky, and currently I'm doing a job that I really love. So I work at SAP, which is a big software tech company, and I work in customer engagement, which is kind of a mix between account management and, customer success and sales. So that's something I really love. And of course, as Aaron mentioned, I also have my own podcast called I'm in My 20s, which I started as a quarantine project back in 2020. So it's been just over 2 years coming, and it's been super fun. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I think for the most part, when a lot of people understand kind of the space of being in your 20s, and I think you're still early 20s. Mid-20s is 25.
That's comforting.
Yeah, that's the threshold there. We just turned 24. You're 97?
98.
No, 98. Yeah. Okay, so I'm turning 25, so I'm entering the midlife crisis.
Okay.
Yeah, what a fitting time for this episode, but. I think I would love to kind of just start off a little bit about sort of your experience in regards of venturing into that space. And what I mean by that space, I think, is what a lot of people, I guess, technically speaking, consider the adult world, which is after, your graduation. And if you're not, either doing a post-grad or another degree after graduation or stuff like that. So we both graduated during COVID times.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your experiences, about how you navigated that and how people potentially, we're recording this in the middle or end of May, where there's a lot of graduation ceremonies going on right now. So I think it's a great time to maybe share to those graduates, what's next, or what can you do?
Yeah, totally. I mean, first of all, if you're listening and you just graduated or about to, big congratulations to you. That's a really big milestone in life. I actually just went to my friend's grad ceremony a couple hours ago, and it was amazing to kind of get an experience that I didn't get to get because I was a COVID grad. So I was just watching my grad ceremony from my room on a YouTube live stream, unfortunately, which is very sad. But I know that the anxiety associated with graduating is really huge because, prior to that, we've been in school for practically 10 years or even longer, high school plus university, college, that's 10 years of schooling. And after schooling, you're free to practically do whatever you want, right? And you having the freedom to choose your own path is very scary. And I certainly went through like a huge like post-grad crisis around the time that I was approaching graduation. I was like, what am I even doing? I don't have a job lined up. I don't know if I want to jump into entrepreneurship, start my own business, move to a different country, you know, just travel for a couple months or go straight into full-time work. I honestly had no idea. So I think a big part is being comfortable with that uncertainty. But do you want me to share a bit about like my journey, or where do you want
Yeah,
to?
I think, I mean, I'd love to, obviously, you know, I've talked about my journey, so people already know about that plenty of times.
Right.
I guess like my question to you is, you know, you're talking about dealing or facing the uncertainty and being okay with that. But, you know, some students that might feel like, if I don't have a job right out of university, I feel like I've, you know, for a lack of a better word, failed, right? Even though that's not necessarily the case. What would you recommend or maybe say to someone that comes up to you and be like, hey, Meg, you know, I graduated. I can't find the job for the life of me. I'm struggling. What do I do? Do I give up? Do I follow my passion or figure out if I maybe want to do different hobbies instead?
Right.
What would you kind of say to that student if I were to, you know, come up to you and tell you that?
Yeah, well, that's big because I do have friends that are coming up to me asking that right now. Like a couple of my
There you
friends
go.
graduating, they're like, I don't have a job. I don't know what to do. Do I take this one? Will I regret it? And, you know, the thing I always remind them is like, you can't predict the future. Like if you know, you're going to face different choices. Either it's like taking a job or like following your passion or traveling. And you can't really predict how a certain job or path is going to go until you try it, right? And I guess the whole premise of being in your 20s is that it's the perfect time for experimentation, and there's no way that you're going to just jump into a job and it's going to be the dream job that you're going to do for the rest of your life the moment you graduate. That's just totally unrealistic, right? Like I know people that have graduated 2-3 years ago and they're still trying to like find their path. I know people who've taken a few years off to travel, some people who went straight into work and they regret not taking time off to travel. So like no matter what path you take, you're gonna have certain regrets, but you're also gonna have a lot of blessings, right? So, you know, unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, any choice you make in life is gonna come with compromise. And I think that, you know, no one can tell you what path is right or wrong. Like the job thing, it's just external pressure. I think everyone tells you like, oh, to be successful, you got to land this job, that job. Especially me coming from business school, like that was huge because that's like all everyone talks about. It's like, especially on LinkedIn too, you see everyone's like job updates, like, oh, this person started working here.
Can we talk about LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but
for sure.
I think that's super important, especially for someone who is a recent grad. I personally didn't use LinkedIn that, I guess, often, for lack of a better word, until probably in my last year, in my 5th year, which funny enough, I started taking it seriously because I was part of the marketing association and they were like, yeah, you should probably maybe use LinkedIn a bit better. Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. So I thought it was only for business students, and that's not the case at all. Yeah. But I think there is a lot of negative stigma, and I've seen even a couple of memes as well of like creating the perfect LinkedIn post or curating the perfect, like after 652 interviews, 200 and phone calls, I finally landed the perfect job, and like the finish is like, the job is not an actual job. Like it's obviously mimicking and making fun of those particular posts. So you have experience with LinkedIn, I would imagine, and you mentioned it right now. How do you navigate that platform without creating that, I guess, toxic relationship with the space?
Right. Well, to be honest, I'm not really a creator on LinkedIn. I just have my profile and I use it as a space to connect with people, but I don't personally make posts. But a big part of any social platform is you got to curate your feed in a way that serves you, right? So I personally follow influencers, LinkedIn influencers that I find inspiring, you know, people like Bill Gates, you know, Mel Robbins, Tom Billio, just people that post content that I'm like, wow, I really resonate with this. Correct. And I connect with my friends who tend to engage with content that I resonate with. But obviously with any platform, you can't exactly filter out everything that's going to make you feel bad. So anytime you go into a platform like LinkedIn, you know, you got to kind of mentally prepare yourself like, oh, if you see a bunch of posts of people posting their job successes, are you going to feel bad about yourself? Or are you going to, you know, reframe that as inspiration? And I think a huge part comes with, you know, how are you personally going to take that, right? And, you know, I personally see those successes. I was like, wow, that's amazing. You know, good for them. I'm genuinely happy for them, and I see that as inspiration, as opposed to seeing LinkedIn as a space where everyone's just bragging. Because I think it is a very great place to celebrate your successes, and I think it's a great place to be happy for people. But obviously, if that's not the way that you can see LinkedIn, then maybe it's not a good idea to spend that much time on it. So it's all about being mindful.
Yeah, I like how you said as well, like curating your feed. And I think having that relationship with social, a healthy one, is doing that exactly. I mean, obviously right now with Instagram, for example, the way that the feed is set up is absolutely abysmal. It's all over the place. It's like add random or random person that I don't follow, add, you might like, add. I'm like, what's going on, right? So I think Instagram as a whole, that experience in general has been drastically reduced. And I think a lot of people are kind of on that same boat. In terms of LinkedIn, I think funny enough, I probably check LinkedIn second most out of all socials. It used to be Instagram number one. And I talked about this in my episode of Catching Up with Aaron that will be, by the time you're seeing this, it's already live, but having a healthy relationship with social. And back in 2018, it was all about Instagram. I was like addicted to it. Like I can honestly say it was an addiction. And now after like the pandemic, or I guess during the pandemic, I took a step back from it because I was like, well, I don't need to use it anymore because I'm not, creating content as much or at all. And I pivoted to Twitter, and I guess Twitter can also be a relatively bad thing, and there are certain things to that. But for whatever reason, I just feel like it's less BS to some extent, obviously, but at least the feed that I'm seeing on Twitter is the actual feed that I want, and not just like, you might like this, sponsored. It's actually the people that I'm following. There's some suggestions, but it's still within the realm of people that I'm following and in that space. And second to that is LinkedIn. Just because I feel like with LinkedIn, there's so many different things that I can see just again from the people that I follow. And I think what it does well is that it does a lot of like, for example, if I'm following you or I'm connected with you and you like something, it's done pretty well, at least from my experience of like, Meg liked this, and then it'll show you what you liked. And it's at least, I think 8 times out of 10 relevant to sort of what I would like as well. I don't know how it does it, but that's machine learning for you. So I think LinkedIn is doing a very good job. And even then I'm finding a lot of different events and opportunities through that platform because of just probably, again, some sort of communication with other platforms and cookies. And that's a topic for a different day. But I think it's important, I guess, wrapping that kind of topic as a whole, important to curate your feed. And just honestly, like, if you don't care for it, like, just unfollow or even block if you're still getting that kind of stuff. So
100%.
It's important. It's important to have that boundary. I wanted to talk a little bit about actually living the adult life. Again, I use that term very loosely because anyone, that adult life can be anything really. But in this context, it's post-graduation, working, your job, your 9 to 5, quote unquote, and your maybe activities outside of that. How has that experience been for you? You've been doing it for over a year now.
Just over a year now.
Just over a year now. Tell us a little bit more about that experience and what that's been like for you.
The adult life.
Yes, the adult life. I still feel like this. I feel exactly the same as when I was in university. I don't know about you, but
I totally agree. I think this whole perception of like, when you graduate university and you start working full time, you're going to like have everything figured out and be an adult. Even though, it's easy for us to kind of present ourselves that way. The reality is like no one actually feels that way. Like a lot of my colleagues, they're in their like mid to late 20s and they still like have no idea what's going on. So that's personally very comforting for me. But my experience has been super awesome. Personally, like I graduated UBC and, I had a lot of anxiety with finding a job or starting my own business. That's a whole like storm of a story. But I ended up going back and taking an internship at SAP, which is the place where I interned like before I graduated actually. So this was kind of through connections, went back and did an internship and loved it. And lucky for me, through that internship, I got connected with a team that I found resonated with me so much. That was a field that I didn't even know existed before, which is basically customer engagement. And before before graduating, I was like, do I become like a product manager? Do I become like an e-commerce entrepreneur? Like customer engagement wasn't even on my list of options, but then I stumbled upon it, worked really hard and landed my full-time job, which I actually just started like 4 months ago. Right. And I'm absolutely loving it. And I think depending on what space you work in, full-time job can be lovely. Well, I work in tech, so I am pretty blessed with really great work-life balance. I love my team.
I've been seeing you going to the SAP, like the gym and stuff. Yeah, you're consistent on that. That's good.
The gym is amazing. Team is amazing. Work-life balance is amazing. I think I get paid fair and I feel fulfilled in my work. And
That's
so
important.
after work, it's like this work-life balance thing for me personally is very important. It's like after 5 p.m., I am not touching my work laptop.
Yeah. So what do you do after 5? Like what's
Hobbies.
your
Yeah.
okay, like I guess hobbies, but do those hobbies, so I think just even on that topic of hobbies, do those hobbies, do they turn into side hustles or are they hobbies like just purely hobbies? Because I think we're in an era where a lot of people feel like their hobbies need to make them money.
Right.
And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, I have hobbies too. Like I play video games. I do like other things as well. I mean, I'm not a professional video game player by any means. That's not making me any money. This podcast as well, like there's no revenue in source right now. I just do it for a hobby because I love talking to people.
Right.
If someone wants to sponsor it, by all means, you can sponsor it. Yeah, so I guess, sorry to cut you off, but like I'm curious as to what that looks like because hobbies obviously is very broad.
Totally. Well, I mean, it depends on the individual if you want to use that time to build a side income. Like I have some friends who their 5 to 9 after their 9 to 5 is focused completely on different revenue streams, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I admire the hustle. For me, I like to take a bit of a more balanced approach. A lot of my hobbies are, for fun, but I think they're for fun in a productive way because I love friends. I love having connections, and a lot of my hobbies are social events with friends that
you
involve
like climbing.
physical activity.
I've been seeing you doing a lot of climbing.
Yeah, so I do rock climbing. I was snowboarding before the season ended. Now I'm getting back into biking.
Wow.
Gymming consistently, and just, catching up and having great conversations with great people. I think connection with people is huge for me, and fitness is also huge for me. So that's what I fill most of my time with, but also make sure to have space for, your wellness time too.
Of course.
So I spend a lot of time by myself after work and just journal, skincare, meditation, just, the regular stuff that, you should take care of yourself. And I find that a lot of these stuff I was neglecting while I was in university because it was all about the hustle and the grind.
Yeah.
And I was
get good grades.
Yeah. Handing in assignments at like 11:59 and then having to wake up at 7 to catch like the bus and commute for an hour.
God.
But I think personally for me, I found the blessing of post-graduation is like so much better work-life balance. And you finally get to do and explore things that you never had the time to do before. So I've been doing that and it's been really fun.
No, I like that. And I think it's important that you really, first of all, I admire that. I think for a lot of people, even having a quarter of what you're doing outside of the 9 to 5 is a bit of a difficult, I guess, operation, even for a lack of a better word, because you need to find, as you said, that balance between what you like to do for fun and maybe what you like to do also for fun, but maybe for another reason as well.
Yeah.
And building that boundaries, I think, are super important. That seems to be a topic of discussion in most of my podcasts recently is setting those boundaries internally and also externally, whether that be with friends or letting them know, hey, don't expect a reply from 9:30 to 11 because that's my, my self-care, meditating, skin routine,
Exactly.
whatever it is you might be doing. So where do you find the motivation to, I guess, actually, let me rephrase that question. You mentioned, and Tim a couple episodes ago talked about work fulfillment and being fulfilled with the work that you're accomplishing, whether it be you're personally working towards a better goal or the company as a whole working towards a goal. What would you describe as like your reason for being fulfilled for work? Is it sort of like internally, externally? And what would you tell to someone who maybe isn't necessarily feeling that, like they're going to work, it's not necessarily a tough job or anything, but they're just not satisfied with the work that they're doing?
Right. First of all, I do recognize I am very blessed to say that I truly feel fulfilled at work and truly do love my job. I know it's rare to hear people say that.
It is, honestly.
It really is.
Some people just, and unfortunately, I mean, just anecdotally, obviously there's no stats behind this, but I would say for the most part, like out of my close friend group of, let's say, just 10 people, I think maybe only like 2 or 3 actually can say what you're saying. So I totally agree.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, the fulfillment really comes from like, knowing what you value and need, right? For example, when I was pursuing kind of solopreneurship, although I was fulfilled being, having the autonomy to be creative, drive my business whenever I want, work whenever I want, I felt a huge sense of loneliness. And this came from understanding myself that I'm a not only am I very extroverted, but I also really crave connection and people and collaborating with incredibly smart, like-minded, fun, ambitious people. And that's a huge part of my work because I work in account management, that every single day I'm working with different talented people all across North America and the globe. And that part fulfills me immensely. So every day is exciting and new. And also the nature of my team is I have a lot of autonomy. So I still get to, exercise creativity a lot and come up with new projects and ideas and actually see that come into action and create a huge impact because I work for a huge company.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of my fulfillment. And I think it's important for you to think about what you need in a job and kind of find a job that hits as many of those bullets as you can possibly find.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it when you said finding, your values, and Tim said this as well, like you really have to take a step back and understand what makes you, like, I guess, push forward for the reason that you're going to work, or finding yourself in the position that when you go into those doors or you work remote or whatever, it's like today we're striving to make the world or the company or even myself a better version of where you were yesterday. So I think that's important to really understand. I'm going to do a little bit of like a scenario here because I think this is a very common question when it comes to, again, like living the postgraduate, quote unquote, adult lifestyle. Let's say I'm a student, I'm a recent grad. I'm looking into getting into a space that has nothing to do with my degree. Obviously, in your case, you studied business and you're within that space in one way or another. Might not be direct apples to apples, but there's definitely some overlap there. Yeah. What would you recommend to someone, even though you might not have gone through it, but I think from your experience, you have a pretty good insight for this, to someone who's trying to enter that space, whether it be business, tech, or whatever, but has zero idea where to start, zero idea on, their degree. They studied political science and now they're wanting to become an account manager.
Right, for sure. That's really common. And it's very comforting, actually, that the people in my team, I think only a small percentage of us actually have business degrees. So I'm in the odd case where I do. And I actually switched from accounting over to marketing.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. Did you ever do like accounting internship co-ops? Oh,
yes.
like
I
Deloitte.
Yes, you do remember. Yeah, I actually worked at Deloitte for 4 months as an accountant. Completely switched over to marketing, which seems completely unrelated, and luckily landed an internship at SAP. And so I can kind of draw from that experience. And I would say that no matter what field you're pivoting into, your past experiences, they can all be relevant. Like no matter what you've done, whether you worked in any sort of customer service, you worked in food, you worked in project management, you worked in, anything in community service, you worked as a VP in a club. No matter what, there's always going to be transferable skills. So you're going to have to stretch your creativity a little bit and pull out those transferable skills and match them to the job that you're desiring to get, right? So even if your degree isn't related, 100% your skills might be related. Yeah. And that's where also passion projects plays a huge role. So if you haven't had experience in teams and those things, you can create your own experience, right? So me starting my podcast actually played a huge part in me landing my current job, to be completely honest, because I do have my podcast on my resume. I also experimented with e-commerce, and surprisingly, I talked about those a lot in my interviews, and the interviewers were like, wow, that's really cool, because not everyone just starts their own side hustles, right? That goes to show your creativity, your ability to manage your own time, and a bunch of other things. So if you do have the capacity for it, consider even starting a side project or something that could be related to the field that you're into and translating that into something. But also creating a personal website is also very helpful, especially if you want to jump into the marketing or creativity or branding space, or literally any space that's
I feel like modern. Anyone should have, like, to some extent, maybe nothing like obviously your degree of fanciness, a terrible word, but that's the first thing that came to mind. Difficulty, fanciness, whatever, might vary depending on obviously what field you're in. If you're like probably let's say a UI UX designer, you probably want to have a nice looking portfolio that follows UX rules and stuff. But even like myself, not to kind of flip the script a little bit, but I created a personal website like just a couple months ago because I was like, I'm in the marketing space and I'm not even like marketing myself that well outside of like the Beneath Vancouver stuff and my not even my personal Instagram, because my personal Instagram, until I started making those like little snippets, is when I actually started using it again. But on LinkedIn as well, I was like, I should probably maybe start leveraging all the stuff that I have. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of free, it's free, probably trial, but you probably have to pay a little bit, especially if you want a custom domain. But You use Squarespace?
I do.
Right? Yeah. You're still on that?
Yep.
Squarespace? Okay. Yeah. I mean, her website is really, really nice. I remember when I first looked at it, I was like, I messaged you. I remember I was like, Meg, I need some experience, expertise when it comes to like building my website and stuff. So yeah, I mean, Squarespace, there's Wix, there's Adobe Portfolio, I believe as well. But I think if I'm not mistaken, at least the last time I checked, it's more just like photos and galleries related stuff. So maybe not so much a blanket kind of template, but if you want to go the extra step, I highly recommend Webflow. If you really want to if you really want to learn a little bit more, bigger learning curve, but in my opinion, I think you have more flexibility for that. But resumes, you mentioned resumes, and I'm still trying to improve it. I'm going to workshops. I'm getting like coffee chats because I'm trying to pivot into product and trying to learn into how I can get into that space. And I think resumes are really important, obvious reasons, but I think even now more than ever, where you literally have like maybe a couple seconds, or you really need to make sure that everything that you have on your resume is not only like to the point, but also that it provides to the employer the value that you can bring to the team.
Yeah.
And I'm still struggling to do that. Obviously, like making sure that you have quantitative bullet points, you increased revenue by X%. And personal projects, I think, are super important. Fun fact, I actually didn't start putting my Beneath Vancouver stuff until my last year of university. And that actually got me my job at UBC with the brand and marketing team.
Nice.
My work learned there. They're like, oh, you write articles and blogs? We need a blog writer. Oh, you know how to interview people? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, we need, I was like, okay, cool. So anyways, sorry, a bit of a side tangent. Resumes, any kind of like resources, or I don't know, how did you sort of approach your resume? I'm assuming, coming from a business background, there's probably is there a class for resume in solder?
Yeah.
There is, right? Yeah, okay. So obviously you might have some more knowledge. I learned everything through like co-op, kin co-op. So it's a little bit different. And just from trial and error, but let's hear it. What does a fellow graduate from solder have to share for resumes?
Yeah, well, you mentioned something very important, is that not only on your resume, but also your cover letter, you want to focus on the value that you can bring to them. Because I have edited so many resumes for my friends, and one of the biggest feedbacks I give is, instead of saying, look, I am a blah, 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 looking for experience for blah, 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 reframe that, like take it away from something that you're looking to gain from them and make it like, what can you give to them? You as an asset, you as someone that they can employ. So for your bullet points, the biggest thing I would say that I learned that changed my resume completely is to lead with the result, right? Because if you lead with the result, you're leading with the hook. And once they read the hook, you say, oh, I increased revenue by 25% by, and then you list down the exact action that you did. And that's going to keep them, enticed. And I would say, keep your resume to probably like one page, depending on what industry you're in.
That seems to be kind of the rule of thumb.
Are sifting through like countless resumes, and you don't want to bore them with a 2-page and they're not even going to read it, right? So I think they probably take like 6 seconds to skim it before they decide whether or not they even want to move forward with you. So you want to tailor it to the job, and it's the most tedious and annoying thing ever, but trust me, you have to do that.
Yeah.
It pays off. So.
Yeah, you definitely can shotgun approach, which I don't even know if is an actual term, but it's a term I made up, or at least I started using it. I don't know if I can't say I made it up, but it was just like, you have your resume and just apply.
That does not work. Trust me.
Take the time. It does, as Meg said, it does take a while. It is I would say, obviously, as you get better through it, but for me, it's like honestly 30 minutes to up to an hour, just depending on the level of change that I need to do, or making sure I'm going through the job description properly, stuff like that. Actually read the job description.
Yes.
Don't just look at the job title and be like, okay, it's a APM role. Perfect. Where are you going to be working for? What department? What are you going to be building? What are your responsibilities? Like, I was having a chat with Mike, my friend Michael, and he was like, at the end of the day, the title is just a title. Your responsibility is really what boils down to what you're doing in your job, right? Just because you're a digital marketing manager doesn't mean that every digital marketing manager is going to be doing the exact same thing day in, day out. So yeah, just take the time, sift through it, and then just try to, if you can, maybe get a second pair of eyes, and just understand that it's unfortunately a numbers game too, right? Like you're putting your best foot forward, but there's going to be a lot of no's. I mean, I'm kind of into into that mentality where you just have to have the patience and you have to understand that, you know, your opportunity hopefully will come.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about a little bit, I know we were kind of all over the place, but I think these are all really good topics that really revolve around people who, especially if you're a recent grad. I want to talk about networking because I personally think, and some people might not agree with me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. Networking is pretty much the number one tool that you can use, or strategy or whatever, if you want to find a job. And I'm not saying, you know, I think there's a fine line between networking with a purpose and networking just for the sake of like, I want to meet as many different people to add on my LinkedIn and really get that number to 500 plus connections. I think that's completely irrelevant. And you want to start building long-lasting relationships. Yeah. A lot of the people that I could say have helped me develop my career or my skills or whatever have been individuals that I've connected and have maintained a conversation. At least, you know, try to talk with them every couple months. I'm not saying you have to be buddy and speaking with them every single day. Good morning, how are you? Good night, right? That's not expected, but just kind of letting people know that, hey, I'm still thinking about you. Seeing if, you know, for me, like LinkedIn is a good reason for that as well. If they have like a really cool update in life, job, new job or new kind of venture, etc. Having that connection, I think, is super important. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about networking, obviously in terms of the benefits, but also just the overall perception of networking, I think has evolved in the last, I would say, pretty much 2 to 3 years, especially with the pandemic.
Especially with the pandemic and everything being online and networking being as easy as ever before. Networking did have a bad connotation, especially going business school. But I think it's only a bad connotation if you get into a space of thinking, hey, networking is transactional, because it's not. If you approach it as, I'm only networking because these people can give me something, you are not going to be building genuine relationships. That's not the way to go.
They'll see right through you, 100%.
They will. Like, because I've been to countless networking events, and trust me, I can see exactly which students are just like, oh my gosh, who can get me a job, right? And can she get me a job? Can she edit my resume? And if you approach it with that energy, honestly, they're going to see it right through and they're not going to help you. I think networking is very genuine, and I don't like the term networking because of the connotation. Right. I like to say it's building genuine relationships and connections. Like, you're talking to people because you are genuinely curious about their industry, about their job, about their experience, about who they are as a person. And that's how you should approach any connection. And if you're genuinely curious without the motive of like, what can they give me? And you want to focus on building that connection and maybe even offering what you can give to them back, then that's where you'll build relationships that are actually going to be mutual beneficial and long lasting in the future. And I can genuinely say, like, a lot of the stuff that's come out of networking for me that have been helpful for me came out of literally nowhere, right? It's like friends I've made here, friends I met here, random person I talked to here, because I never approached it as like, this person's going to give me something. I just, you know, kept that relationship up because I care about them as a person and I genuinely get excited connecting with them. And out of nowhere, it's like one of them will message me and be like, hey, Meg, I thought of you because I saw this opportunity and I think it would vibe with you, right? So that's the value that networking brings. So take away that transactional approach and focus on connection.
I think that's why we both have podcasts, because that's why we like to do what we do, and having those connections. And, you know, I mean, I've met over, I guess, like 65 plus people just through this podcast, which is crazy. I mean, it's a really good outlet, and I'm not saying you have to go create a podcast, but just understand that the putting yourself out there, I think, is also the most difficult part of that. Because there's obviously a lot of people who are shy or not sure where to even look. And as you said, with the remote side of things as well, some people prefer to meet in person. Some people would prefer, I just want to keep everything remote, but sometimes you can't really vibe, for a lack of a better word, with that person as well, over Zoom or whatever. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus for the podcast, because I was starting to get a little bit burnt out, and I felt like the connection aspect of the podcast, what I really enjoyed doing, was starting to lose its spark, so to speak. So I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. I recommend you use Lunch Club. That's something that I personally used at the beginning of the pandemic. Lunch Club is pretty good. It's free. You set up a time, autopilot sifts through. Have you heard of it?
No.
Yeah, it's actually really neat. It's free, which is always good. We love free things. You just put your interests, who you kind of want to meet, and the times that you're free, and you can put it on autopilot. So like every, let's say, Thursday at 2 p.m., it'll look for people and it'll connect with you and stuff. I've had a really good experience. It used to be invite only. I believe now anyone can sign up. However, since I've come back to it, when it's been kind of open to the public, there's been a lot of flakes. A lot of flakes. Yeah, there's people just don't reply. People say, let's reschedule. They never reschedule. So don't feel discouraged. I think when it was invite only, I never had any issues because I think obviously if you're there, it's probably because you're there for a reason. But I feel like sometimes people just sign up now and kind of go for it. But I've met some really, really cool people. If you're interested in that, I'll put it in the description down below on both the YouTube and the audio version. Also recommend Shaper. Have you heard of Shaper?
Nope.
I'm just like finding all these like random things. I love like new apps. I love new things. Shaper is essentially business Tinder.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not like Bumble Biz. I've never used Bumble Biz, so I have no like baseline to compare it to. But essentially it's very similar. You have you select interests. You only get, I believe, 10 people every day. So you're not allowed to like mass swipe. And essentially you have a little bio, what you're open to meeting for, and you meet people like that. I've met like 1 or 2 people on that so far. I would say 70% of the people, closer to 80, is mostly like the MLMs and the crypto people. So be wary.
Trying to sell you a course and stuff.
So put in your bio, not interested in MLM crypto. That's literally like everyone's bio. Like
no way, that's hilarious.
They'll have like their thing.
Yeah.
And then at the bottom, they'll say like not interested in MLM crypto, Binance,
NFTs.
or NFTs, stuff like that.
Right.
But those are some 2 platforms that I would recommend if you're interested. I'm sure there's other things as well, like free mentor groups on Facebook, LinkedIn. There's so many on LinkedIn. It's kind of overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah.
Mentor Mash is a free platform that I've come across as well. So, I mean, the resources are there. You just kind of have to. It takes energy and takes the time to really sift through that. But those are top of mind. I don't know if you have any to add to that kind of list or.
Yeah, I mean, most of my networking actually comes from kind of in-person connections.
Yeah, those are the best.
People at events, and even if it's like at a non-business event, like a house gathering or someone's birthday party, and you end up just gravitating towards someone.
Have you seen sorry to cut you off. Have you seen the meme where it's like the meme where it's like the house party and the guys in the corner and they're like they don't know that I'm No? Okay, I'll put it in the video right now just to see if people can relate to that. Sorry, when you said house party, that just kind of came to my mind where it's like essentially the joke is like this guy's in the corner and he's like, they don't know that I own like a bored ape or something like that. And it's just like I'll show it to you off once we're done recording, and then I'll also pop it in right now in the video, just so that you know. But
interesting.
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, no, most of my networking comes from in person, and it's always unexpected for me. A lot of my best friends or coolest connections came out of just gravitating towards certain people in a room with people. And I feel like in person, for me personally, is easier because you can read their energy, you can read their body language, and you have that connection right on the spot. You have that conversation in person. So I would say go out and put yourself out there. I know it's scary. I know it's uncomfortable. You can bring a friend. I've been to a couple events alone. I went to a party alone, ended up meeting 2 people who are now my best friends. So yeah, just
never know.
Be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
I love it. That's some Yes Theory level stuff.
I love Yes Theory, by the way.
Well, unfortunately, we are nearing the end of our episode, but I think there's a lot of great information here. And you know, if I was a recent grad and I'm listening to this, I'm like, I'm ready. I'm ready to tackle whatever there is.
Lots of good tools, lots of good tips.
Yeah.
Put in your toolkit.
Exactly. So I'll finish it off here with just kind of asking you the question that I ask all my other guests, and that is, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self? It can be yesterday, it can be 5 years ago, it can be a month ago. The timeline is up to you.
Wow. What I would give to my younger self: stop listening to what people tell you should be doing. If I had listened to myself sooner, I think I would have gotten where I wanted to sooner. Obviously, I'm grateful for their experiences, but I think I was so focused on external validation, awards, achievements, people telling you like what companies to work for, what's a stable job, what's a good income, that I kind of lost sight of my own passions in a way, right? And I think I'm grateful for the pandemic time because that's when I really got to reconnect with my passions and, you know, cheesy, but like kind of follow my heart a little bit more.
Oh, no,
and
that's
that
true.
automatically translates into the work that I love now too. So listen more to yourself. Like, what is your inner gut telling you? What do you want to do?
What do you like to do?
Not what do people say you should do? What do you really like to do? And screw the judgment, right? Just
I like it. Screw the judgment. Do what you like to do. That's super important. Definitely would not be here today if I didn't listen to that. Exactly.
And that's why we have podcasts, because it's like, screw it.
Yeah.
You want to start a podcast? Just start a podcast.
Exactly. You use your phone. You can do whatever, really. I mean, if you haven't already, I have a YouTube video on how to start a podcast. So feel free to check that out. Shameless plug. Now it's your turn for your plugs.
Cool.
Take it away. Where can people find you? How can people connect with you if they want to learn more, have more questions about SAP, tech, etc.?
For sure. Well, you can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn is where I'm most active. So Instagram, it's at Meg Kuang, MEGKUANG is my personal. If you follow along my fitness adventures and everything like that. If you want to check out my podcast, it's called I'm in My 20s. It's on Spotify, Apple, basically anywhere you can find a podcast. And we also have an Instagram at I'm in My 20s. And you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's just Meg Kuang. You can probably just link
I'll put all of that down below just so that there's no loss of translation there or anything like that. But Meg, I really do appreciate it for coming on board. I think the timing of this episode is great. As you mentioned, you literally just came from a graduation ceremony a couple hours ago. And I mean, I think for me it was like, and I'm sure you can relate to as well, the post-grad life journey has definitely been a roller coaster. I've had a lot of mentors, a lot of great resources out there that have helped me to shape, I think, who we are both today. And it's just about paying it forward to the younger folks down there. To younger, I guess not kids anymore, but
not kids anymore, young adults.
Young adults. So I really do appreciate it, and thank you for coming on, and thank you to all of our listeners as well. We've reached a very kind of cool milestone, 30 more episodes until 100, which is crazy. I think we got to do a party or something for that.
Do it.
Yeah.
Bring all your podcast guests into one room. That would be crazy. Can you imagine?
That actually would be kind of crazy.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But thank you again for tuning in. This was episode number 70 of Beneath Vancouver Radio. I'm your host, Aaron. I was joined by Meg. Thank you again, and take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day.